That's fabulous, except you should pick one and stick with it. You know, we're live now. We're recording, so everybody gets to see.
I guess it's good enough.
It's good enough. Is that Seattle Seahawks curtain you have up behind you?
I do, yes.
Well, welcome everybody to Thoughts on Talks with Reverend Mike McMorrow and his Seattle Seahawks curtain. And my name is...
set the vibrational tone for the Seahawk 2021 season.
Okay, that's important because our thoughts become manifest and we can use it. We can use the power of the universe in our lives and affect others. And for any sports fan, I'm sure they will have things to say on both sides of that yes, that works sometimes it doesn't work as much as you want it to work.
Yeah, well, and it probably depends on if you have money on the game or not.
But we're co-creating, so it's not just our choice that gets thrown in the mix. But the purpose of Thoughts on Talks is actually to dismantle, or at least use as a jumping off point, your Sunday talks. That's why we started this anyway, Thoughts on Talks. It has evolved into just conversation, and then every other show we have the Black Lives Matter episode with our friend Salam, which is, not necessarily connected to the Sunday talk directly, but more to the mission of the center, perhaps.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So this week, your Sunday talk was, I think you've done this before, where you kind of start at the beginning of the Science of Mind textbook and you hit the basics at the beginning of the year. Is that true?
Yeah, that's been a tradition in our center.
Good. And is it part of the whole?
Am I echoing on your end?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So, yeah, it's been a tradition in our center going back to at least Dr. Maureen.
Okay.
And the first 4 Roman numeral chapters in the Science of Mind textbook. So let's see if I can remember it. It's the thing itself, how to use it, what it does. And the last one is this week, which is, I forget.
Do you have your notes from your Sunday talk nearby?
Yes.
Okay. I remembered. Huh?
Would you like me to get them?
Well, I don't know. I could also look on the YouTube right quick and see. I know the theme for the month from CSL is evolutionary wisdom, right?
Yes. So
I'm looking that up too.
Vision, evolutionary wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you usually tie in the CSL theme and talk with whatever you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
so what I've been kind of adapting it, because I like doing the review of those first 4 Roman numerals. Oh, how to use it.
So, how to use it.
So what did I say? Oh, I guess that's right. It was how to use it. I was just getting I was getting confused. So
how soon we forget.
Well, that's it. That's why it's good to review it every year.
Yeah, and I think what stuck out for me yesterday, listening to the talk from the comfort of my living room couch with my little bird perched on my shoulder or my chest somewhere, is that you made sure to say that although Ernest Holmes is quoted quite often, it's not that we worship Ernest Holmes, that he was a teacher, and you kind of connected that to the idea of timeless, what is it? Timeless wisdom?
Yes.
And so I think, putting myself in the mind of someone who's maybe seeing a service for the first time, someone new to the Centers for Spiritual Living and Religious Science, that they would find that helpful information. It was so helpful. It gave you a little boost.
A little tickle in my throat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, it is one of the knocks on religious science by traditional churches that we are a cult, and which I don't believe that we are, because usually in cults you are told what to think, and that's all you're allowed to think.
Right.
And although we do have, our vernacular that we use, and we do think in a particular way, there's not any, you're not going to be shunned for bringing in something else. Although I have to say, my approach for our center, so for folks who may be watching who are not familiar with the science of mind teaching, in a nutshell, it's taking the wisdom of the ages and applying that, the spiritual thought of the ages, with focused thought and spiritual practice to create change for good in our life. And basically what we're doing, really, I guess Holmes's contribution is the idea that you can have a scientific prayer, scientific approach to prayer, which means that if you pray in a particular way, that you can have a particular verifiable result. So to me, I've always kind of thought of it as a Western approach, a modernist Western approach to religion or spirituality, with a distinctly American flavor, because America is so tied to capitalism and the pursuit of happiness by means of getting stuff and things.
Okay.
So it hasn't always been that way, but when we moved from an agrarian economy to a consumer goods economy, certainly in the post-war. So Holmes started out, in the turn of the 20th century, we were emerging out of that agrarian economy and into the industrial economy.
Right.
So Holmes started writing and teaching in the 20s, and in the 20s, of course, you have the automotive industry is beginning to emerge, flight, right? So Kitty Hawk was 1917. And so we have these new industrial technologies and industrial development. Of course, Carnegie and, including Rockefeller, is developing the oil fields. Carnegie had already developed the blast furnace and was, making steel and stuff like that long before this. But it nicely, it uses that that drive of achievement.
I think of it as kind of individual expression or achievement. Yes. Whereas in non-Western societies, there tends to be, and even in Victorian Western societies, there's much more of a that you are a reflection of your family, that of your family name, of your family honor. You're much more encouraged to stay within your community and the level of society that you're in. And the American dream, as well as the development of the automobile, gave people individual choices to.
Well, and we did not have the aristocracy.
Right.
And so Europe tried to, and they had various ways that they did that. The French Revolution, the Bolsheviks. In America, we shook that off, in the 1780s when we finally, yeah. So, but what I'm getting at though is that I think in the American system we have the pursuit of happiness is being tied to creating stuff, and so Holmes, and that religion was kind of practiced in a passive way. So you prayed for stuff, but then you were dependent on, if you said the right prayer in the right way and you caught God on the right day and to the right saint or what have you.
Okay.
Versus this much more active idea that you're praying not only for a specific thing, but you're praying knowing that it's already done. Now, that is the way Jesus prayed and the way that he taught to pray. But things didn't develop that way, at least in the major denominations.
Right.
So this guy, this outlier who shows up, and of course his inspiration were the Transcendentalists, who were on the tail end of the Enlightenment era. So anyway, I've always thought it was the American system of government and life was the media for this thing, not just Holmes, but also the Fillmores of Unity,
right,
and Swedenborg, and of course before them, Emerson. Emerson was the big guy who kind of got the ball rolling.
Yeah. So the American angle of it, kind of, because we're a new country also, I feel like we've sort of been the most modern or seen as at the forefront of modernness. And so this idea of,
there's an energy to that too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So taking what is known about science, what is known about technology at the turn of the century or the early 20th century, using things like how trains and steam and clockwork and electricity and all of these things work, and applying that knowledge to spirituality. And so making it a scientific metaphor, seeing spirituality as in a scientific way. So it becomes maybe more rational than what a lot of religion is criticized for being, which is, like blind faith. So for somebody looking for something more, like you said, verifiable and testable, scientific, it seems more rational.
Well, and it also encourages you to think. Right? Now, with that comes personal responsibility, right? So
right.
We are responsible for our own thoughts, and that our thinking impresses itself upon the mind of the divine itself, right? Which is basically what you're trying to do with any prayer, right? Right. So, but this thinking changes a little bit different in that every prayer is heard. And within every prayer, praying in an affirmative way, the solution is in the prayer itself already.
There's also the non-personification of the divine, that it is law, it is energy, it is love itself. It's all of these concepts that don't depend on you talking to an outside being and that personality, but connecting yourself and your inner spirit to that existing divine presence. So it does take a shift of understanding and imagination.
And there's a trap in that too, right? So because you can, it's easy to get stuck in your head.
Yeah, true.
Right. And so there's this, one of the things that's nice about Christianity. Let's just take Christianity because that's the one I'm most familiar with. You have all these images of the, of the Good Shepherd, of God the Father, and then the Son, and the stories of Jesus with his friends. So there's stories of friendship in there, so forth. But it's all, of course, from the prism that, at least when I started reading and learning about such things, that Jesus is already the Godhead, right? So it's interesting. I think what New Thought does is it tries to shift that perspective of, if you can mentally see Jesus as the great example rather than the great exception, right? Which doesn't mean that he was not still exceptional.
Right. Well, and going back to the way that Jesus prayed was to align himself with the divine and tell everybody, you can do this too. You have a direct connection. It's as close as a son to a father. Right. And then even that metaphor got kind of, misconstrued almost, that we had to go to the son to get to the father, that we didn't have that direct connection,
Well, I don't even want to say it was misconstrued, because for billions of people, it works well.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, presumably it does, because they still go to those churches. But, for those with inquiring minds that want to know.
Right. Yeah. Right?
So, so this offers us a way. Well, I see it as an invitation of the divine. So, and when we study these first 4 Roman numeral chapters, the first thing we're doing is we're breaking down the conventions of what we think God is and what the Godhead is.
Right.
And Holmes encourages us to see it in everyday stuff. Now, he's not the first guy who did this, but in his textbook, right? That when you get into the study even deeper, he even speaks to this intelligent principle of God being the androgynous one, because it has both feminine and masculine aspects. So now that, people have been thinking about this stuff for millennia. I mean, the Greeks pondered such things as well. But they also had a very personified way. Basically, gods were superhumans.
Right.
And they had all of the
human foibles.
Yeah, exactly. So
pettiness and jealousy,
all that, and then a wandering eye.
Yeah.
And Zeus liked to come down and impregnate, mortal women on a regular basis. Of course, he wasn't the only one, but
they were naughty gods.
So, well, it's just, to the way I see it is, this is just a continuum of the evolvement of our own spiritual evolution and exploration.
Yeah.
And that Barbara Marx Hubbard and others, I think, are onto something when they talk about that the next evolution of the human animal is in consciousness. And I think that is underway right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are these wild swings. So if we just look in, this past week, I didn't talk about this. We had the inauguration. So you had, this way of doing, the status quo for, I don't know, 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump comes along and says, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. That's a mess. We're going to make it great again. And then did what he did, which basically was to not only, upset the apple cart, but then, burn it down at the end. And so, and then you have this other guy who comes in, the new administration comes in, and its main thing is just, okay, let's just everybody breathe, right? Everybody breathe. We're going to figure out a way to come together.
Right.
That whole thing. So I think if we look at the way spirituality works, it kind of too has that sine wave that's going on where we move from one extreme to the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's on this upward, and I think this is the arc of humanity is upward. So,
and you're drawing kind of a spiral path as you do that.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So there is that theory called spiral dynamics that Ken Wilber talks about, and it is the evolutionary or the evolution of consciousness and understanding that spiral. So we revisit concepts and then revisit them again in a higher understanding, and that's the continuum.
Well, sure, because if you think about, as you move in from one quadrant to the next, right? So, because it's, I don't know if it's a perfect, slinky kind of spiral, but it's probably a, more like a lasagna noodle set in a spiral. But so for instance, you might just be killing it, the area of career, but you can't keep a relationship together, but as you work into this spiral, every time you come around into that quadrant, you're not coming at it with the same consciousness that you did the last time.
Right.
So, so I like that notion of the spiral, and I've just always thought of it as a slinky, only because I used to have those as a toy.
Yeah. The slinky, though, was like perfectly cylindrical when you smushed it together.
Right.
And I'm picturing
I'm talking about
spiral as like that.
Right. When you take it,
when you unravel it, which is how most slinkies ended up.
Yeah.
For fun, it's a wonderful toy.
Right. So for about 5 minutes.
If you have stairs, maybe. It wasn't so fun. We didn't have stairs in our house, so we'd have to find a couple of steps.
Slinky. Okay, well. Okay.
So we did talk about the inauguration, though, on the last episode of Thoughts on Talks, because our episode was on Inauguration Day.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned that the following day, the 21st, was an event called the People's Inauguration. And I caught the end of that.
Yeah, what was that like?
It was pretty cool. I mean, it's, the new Zoom format of every conference. It's a bunch of speakers, but it was also these two hosts, Valerie Kaur, I think, or Kaur, Kaur, and Baratunde Thurston. And so they're activists and artists, and they have gathered a bunch of people together, and then they started a 10-day revolution of love, which is through Sounds True, which is an audio, like spiritual audio company. So let's see. The People's Inauguration. If you go to thepeoplesinauguration.org, it will lead you to the Sounds True 10-day thing. And I think we're on the 4th or 5th day now. And each one has a video and an audio exploring topics like wisdom, love, fight, and different deeper skills or understandings that we can develop to be better citizens with love and understanding and connection at the forefront. So if you have missed them, I think you can either purchase them from Sounds True as a whole curriculum, but you might be able to, for free, check them out one at a time and explore them. I think it was for today's, I have to check again, Maggie Wheeler, who I interviewed on Pop Conscious years ago. She played the character Janice on Friends, who said, "Oh my God." But she does a lot of Ubuntu African community choruses. So she, in Culver City here in Los Angeles, I think is where they're based. They do the Golden Bridge Choir, and it's a community choir. Nobody auditions. Anybody who wants to sing in community can join. And so it's very much like when you hear sort of the like the backup when Paul Simon had the big African choir behind him for that one album. That's a kind, she and a friend of mine, Emil Dyer, do that choir together. But Maggie Wheeler was one of the speakers in this Revolution of Love series. So I was kind of excited to see, oh, hey, I've actually met her. I know that person. That's kind of fun. Yeah, so I'll have to check it out and let you know more. And
I don't know anyone famous. Well, that's not true. My high school quarterback did play for Miami.
Okay.
So for a while there.
You know plenty of people that are well known. You just don't want to name drop. That's what it is. Yeah, you're just going to go with that. Good.
Sure.
Sure. So basically from inauguration and programs like this and the conversations that we were having around Black Lives Matter, we're all being called. We all have the invitation and the opportunity to learn how to be better citizens ourselves, to not just go back to normal now that things seem normal in the White House, to like let them take care of everything. We need to learn from this and make sure it doesn't happen again, and that we are listening to people whose opinions are different and figuring out a way to connect. Yes. And if we can do that through spiritual means, then, you know, that heart-centered connection, that deeper connection seems to be the most promising way to go about it.
Well, yeah, because this stuff that's going on in our country is not going to heal itself.
Yeah.
It really is dependent on people doing the work within themselves which means that, dealing with some inconvenient stuff, right?
Yeah.
I have, I know several folks who feel like, they didn't get a job because of affirmative action, for instance,
Mm.
or thinking along that line. And so, given that affirmative action has been so wildly successful, why do we have to do anything more? Well,
Mm.
you know, the um, the data doesn't point to that. Number one,
Right.
and number two, it's not usually young white men who are getting stopped and shot,
That's the thing.
right? So we have, and and it's not. I don't think really, and I think what we're learning now is that it's not really a policing problem. It's just a systemic. It's a systemic consciousness issue
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be shifted. And if we work on things from that perspective, knowing that each one of us doing our own work is the way that we shift it, so that
Right.
fear is lessened for everyone on either side of that equation. Because,
Mm-hmm.
because we ask our police to do an extremely difficult job, uh, uh, and they are dealing, you know, they're not dealing with the model citizens
Right.
anywhere,
Yeah.
anywhere in town. So anyway, eh, I kind of, I don't know if it's true or not, but my thinking is that LAPD does as good a job as anyone can, and they're committed to shifting that. And then it's up to us then to do, not
Mm-hmm.
only do our own work around such things, but then also to fund our agencies enough to where, so for instance, this idea of sending out social workers versus law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
I think many uh, law enforcement officers would welcome that,
Yeah.
because not that they can't do that, I mean, part of it is just being willing to keep your cool and listen.
Yeah.
But when you have a system that kind of militarizes that component, when they when the uniform shows up, they don't see the man or the woman, they see the badge.
Mm-hmm.
That can either calm the situation down or
Escalate.
escalate. Yeah. So I mean, that's just one area.
Mm-hmm.
That's why my own commitment, as the guy who's running this place, I think it's important that, you know, post middle aged white guys host these types of conversations, because I just think it's important for people in the community to see people who look like I do willing to have those conversations. So because because it is true, if we change our thinking, we can change our life. And
Right.
we understand that there is a power for good in the universe, call it what you will, that's available to everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and all of us can use it, right? Then uh, we can go about the business of actually healing, or even bringing a healed consciousness to things,
Mm-hmm.
um, in every area. So race is really just the tip of an iceberg of a system that has a lot of inequality in it, that
Mm-hmm.
has been exasperated for some time now because of
Yeah.
policy decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any upside to not only COVID, but the fact that everybody's been home and thinking about things, and then of course the well, George Floyd was just a pivotal moment because things were caught on tape
Yeah.
in the most calloused way. So, you know, the information is there.
Yes.
And if we want to have a better life together, then we're going to have to do things differently and do things differently together. So I think this science of mind teaching can be very helpful that way.
Yeah.
Um, even if, even for folks who want to use their religion of origin, right? So those, uh, let's call them the traditional denomination religions that have a lot of devotion in them, that we can also, someone could actually use the principles that we're talking here and easily adapt them.
Yes.
Because really what we're talking about is thinking clearly and then doing what's ours to do and surrendering the rest to the spirit. And then knowing that part of that is paying attention because God works for us by working through us.
Right. So it's almost like we need to get out of our own way. We need to take off blinders that keep us from accessing that consciousness and retrain our brains, our thoughts, make new connections between heart and mind. There's something called heart math that talks about how there's kind of a brain in your heart, that it's not your brain isn't really the only place where decisions are made and emotions are stored. And so when we can shift even that, things that we take for granted about how our bodies work, how the world works, and just be curious and willing to look at new ways of approaching everything. I mean, that alone opens us up to make connections that we might not have made before.
Yeah, and of course, a huge component of that, it takes a lot of courage to be able to do such things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's also a part that I don't know if it's true or not, I guess, but I don't think it hurts to have taken a few lumps from life, to that it's all not, it's just not all honky dory and, ice cream and unicorns. And, uh, you know, that we're not wishing and hoping things away, and we're not playing let's pretend either.
Right.
Instead, to the extent that we can, one day at a time, seeing things clearly
Mm-hmm.
and doing the next indicated thing, understanding that the spirit is backing our play,
Mm-hmm.
and that um, and when we understand that there's that we live within this divine flow or divine right action of life, that we can just move. We can move with life and with its challenges and sometimes setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And and realize that that's not the end of it. That we can have a new thought, right? So I have found it to be very helpful in my own life, which of course is why I wrote the book that I wrote, Blue Collar Spirituality, Finding a God That Works, because that is how it worked for me, is that I came to see that the spirit was all over the place during my working day when I went looking for it. So
Yeah.
now you have to get kind of creative in that sometimes. I'm the first to admit that. But not that creative. I mean, if you just kind of pay attention. But I suppose you do have to be willing to give God the credit instead of taking the credit yourself. Maybe that is true. But that doesn't mean that there's not enough credit to go around.
Right. I mean, we're co-creating, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah, but that doesn't mean that we can't still be grateful.
Right. Yeah, that's a great state to be in, a state of gratitude. So
you write a beautiful song and it has this great melody and it has these interesting changes and deep lyrics, and maybe it just pours right out of you like a gift, right? Anyone who's attempted at writing a song, some of them just come that way.
Yeah.
To see it as a gift, and also that gift could not have been presented to the world except through our unique contribution to the creative process. So using music as a metaphor for anything that we create in our life. And I do mean anything from romance to finance.
And that rhymes. Is that your next book, perhaps?
Maybe.
I think so.
Actually, it might be a line in the last one.
It might be. That's it. That's a hint to those like me who haven't finished and gotten all the way through. Now I'm going to look for that. It's like you've just given an Easter egg for me to look and find when you said it.
Yeah. Page 64, paragraph 3.
Nuh-uh. You don't know your book that well.
No, I don't. I just have some though. So if anyone's actually listening and wants to have a signed copy to give as a gift or whatever, just let me know and I'll be glad to do that.
Yay.
Only $10. That's the cheapest enlightenment you're ever going to get.
And it's wonderful because it's so applicable. Like the examples you give of the parts I have read are so clear and easy to make that connection. And so, especially for people who do that kind of physical labor, or manly men who maybe haven't seen that connection before, it really offers an opportunity to just, I don't know, make that connection.
Well, I think it's a pretty good book. I recommend it.
Well, that's good, because if you don't.
Well, and I haven't heard anyone who hates it. So
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
Including my brothers.
Nice. Brothers can be tough critics.
Yeah, exactly. They can be.
So we've gone from the topic of the Sunday talk, which was, do we remember again? How to use it.
I think it was looking forward and what it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so
giving tools, including your book.
In that chapter, it's just basically talking about how the law works.
Okay. And of course, people can go to our website at cslgh.org, where we have lots of different ways that people can connect the concepts. We've got blog posts from the many practitioners at our center, and even some from the Rev himself.
Well, we have a lot of prayer treatments on there too.
Mm-hmm. And lots of videos of previous episodes of Thoughts on Talks, of your Wednesday night meditation services and Sunday services, and other things. So there's plenty of information available for anybody wanting to learn more about the philosophy behind religious science, science of mind, new thought, all that jazz.
Right. Or just how to get your life straightened around. Never mind all the fancy talk.
There you go.
Right.
And enjoy it. And, appreciate
it. If you are if you are familiar with the center, but you haven't been online for a while, to check out our new website, because it's pretty snazzy. Thank you, Malayna. Malayna redid it for us. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fun project. So I'm hoping people are able to utilize all the different things that are in there. And, we have all the YouTube channel that Sherry Gideons has worked on to make it so like its own channel. I mean, it literally is its own channel, but it has different playlists, and it has graphics, and it has, great archives. So, so many tools available for people.
Yes.
So if you were to send people off with a closing thought from this episode, what would it be?
Well, I guess a couple of them, right? So number one, God is way more than you think it is. That the living spirit is impressing itself upon all of life, looking for ways to create. And so why not open up your life to allow this living spirit to create your best life by means of you?
Ooh, that was good. And that reminds me too about your noontime prayer on Facebook Live that you do every day. And so you can hear more like on the spot. It's like Spirit speaking through Reverend Mike with authority.
That's an interesting commitment that I've made through the COVID thing.
Often outdoors.
I try to do it outdoors if I can. Just because so many people are homebound or office bound, maybe.
Yeah.
Might mean the same thing these days.
Yeah.
So, true. But, and that's also where I'm, that's where I get my charge, is by being in nature. And it's been that way for me since I was a little fella. And which is something that I picked up from my mom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because my mom, when I was small, and she got to be too busy when everybody else started, because I was the oldest.
Okay.
But, yeah, she would. Well, and we lived in Ohio, so you could actually grow things there.
Okay.
So anyway, that sparked something in me. It's always been kind of fascinating to me how a little tiny seed can, becomes a plant.
It is fascinating.
Right? And then I was a forestry major in college. And the first time you see sequoia seeds, right? They're like a little bigger than poppy seeds. and yet they
Wow.
grow these gigantic trees, right? So
I
and
have often found nature to be the best metaphor and guide for spirituality, because
yeah,
we can see its resilience and its creativity and its adaptability.
and we are part of that chain of creation.
Yes, we are.
So all really is a reflection of this thing we call the divine. So
Woo! So let's go out and live it.
yeah, let's start acting like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Reverend Mike, for another lovely episode of Thoughts on Talks.
Thank you for guiding us through it.
Sure. And we'll see you Wednesday night for the Wednesday night meditation.
Yes, very good.
Bye okay. Now.